All right, guys, we're going to get started. Terrific. So I'm Joey Wender. I'm with Senator Ed Markey's office. We're helping to host this event today. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. This is a really excellent panel that you guys have put together here. This is going to be a really exciting month, certainly the open meeting at the FCC, both on expanding diversity in media, as well as improving consumer choice on how we actually access that content. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, and with that, turn it over to Chris Lewis, who's going to moderate our panel.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you. We'll just turn on the mic. There you go. And I just saw, there he is, our last name. Thanks everybody for coming out. My name is Chris Lewis. I'm Vice President for Government Affairs and Public Knowledge. And we are very excited about this topic. I hope folks have been following. If you haven't been following the Twitter discussion when it comes to the set-top box issue, I hope you continue to follow it. Follow hashtag #UnlockTheBox, and you'll see a lot of discussion online about what we've been talking about today. And if you're tweeting, we hope to use that hashtag today. So we've got a fantastic panel here. We are looking ahead to February 17th, when the FCC has two items that we think are really related and linked on their agenda. Number one, a notice of inquiry to look at barriers to diversity in the video marketplace, and number two, a proposal from the chairman, a notice of proposed rulemaking around unlocking video devices, what people call the set-top box. And we think they're linked because of the potential to give consumers more choices, potential to give diverse, independent, minority programmers an opportunity to reach their audience in a new way, in a way uncovered by gatekeepers, and also the opportunity to have new innovation on those devices that we haven't seen before because of their ability to be connected to the internet and connected to all sorts of video feeds. So we have an expert panel here, and they are going to talk from their experience about why they think that this proceeding is important. And then we're going to open it up for questions. I have a few questions, but I encourage folks to think of what you want to ask about the topic, what you've been hearing about in the media. And so when we get to questions, I'll just ask that folks raise their hand, and I'll call on you and tell us who you are and what, where you represent, where you work. And we'll have a good conversation rather than until the 1 o'clock hour. So let me introduce our panel, and they're each going to take a few minutes to get their perspective. From your left to right, on the end, we have Mr. Mark Cooper from the Consumer Federation of America. Next to him is Public Knowledge's own John Bergmeyer. After that, we have Eric Easter, who leads the National Black Programming Consortium. Next, we have Joseph Torres from Free Press, a consumer advocacy group. And then finally, next to me is Mr. Brian Woolfolk, who works for Swan Creek Strategies and has long-time expertise in the video marketplace. I'm going to ask John Bergmeyer from Public Knowledge to kick it off for us, and to give a little background on when we talk about set-top box, when we talk about video devices and the great potential of unlocking the set-top box. What is the consumer experience that we're talking about?
Sure. I think the consumer story is probably why Congress got involved in this issue in the first place when it passed the legislation the FCC started to implement. And it's also why public knowledge is involved. And I think the best way to understand the consumer story is just to look at what things are like for consumers now who are cable customers or satellite customers, and how we think it could be. Right now, people who want to watch this subscription television programming, for the most part, are doing it on a rented set-top box. The cable content is in a walled garden controlled by the cable company, by which I mean the cable company controls what's on the set-top box, what you see on the screen when you're interacting with it. They control the programming guide. If there's advertisements on the top of the screen, they're selling them. They control the search. If there's any recommendations, they control. It's a totally cable control experience. People are paying to rent these devices, and really, if you add up the amount year they could have bought a more capable device. And people do increasingly watch content from non-cable sources. People watch video online. That's definitely true. But for the most part, people who do so are doing it on their laptop, on their tablet, on their smartphone, or they have to buy a separate device to attach to their TV and then switch their TV between modes. I think that's not the best customer experience. It leads to a duplication of devices, a lot of redundancy, and extra cost, as well as the inability for consumers to really integrate these different services to, for example, search for a program and have it show up, whether it's on cable or online. The world that we think that we could have with video devices and video services is much more like the world that we have in other areas of consumer electronics. You own your own device. There's a competitive market of devices where you can go to Best Buy, you can go to Amazon, and choose between different devices at different price points with different capabilities. You can access your video content on any compatible device or app, not just ones that are designed by your cable company, provided by your cable company. And we think that devices like that are much more likely to be open. If you're making a device and you're selling it directly to consumers, you're going to give them access to online video content as well as cable content all in one unified interface. And I think that will open up competition not just on the device side and innovation on the device side, but also create new opportunities for video programmers and distribution that sort of bypasses the traditional cable model. This is exactly how it works in other areas of consumer electronics, and I think that's just sort of what I'll end by. You don't access the internet on your Comcast browser, on your Comcast laptop, and then you can only interact with Comcast-approved websites. Instead, you have standards, and it's those standards that mean that you can buy a laptop from Dell, HP, or Apple, and you can use it on your broadband connection at home, regardless of whether you got Fios or Comcast or Charter broadband or satellite broadband. Because you have standards, you're allowed that you can then have competitive consumer electronics markets. So what we're asking the FCC to do is to create that standard, and it's that standard that allows the innovation that we've seen thrive in broadband devices and mobile phones and tablets and so forth.
Thanks, John. I think we're really lucky to have Eric Easter here, and I'm going to ask him to talk because he comes at it from the business side as a programmer. And I'd like to hear from you, Eric, a little bit about the challenges in today's market for programmers and coverage, and what you see as the potential.
Sure. I'm the chairman of the National Live Programming Consortium. And for those who don't know, there are 4 similar consortia that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting funds to find, fund, develop, produce diverse programming for PBS, specifically for the public media market, whether it be digital or for television. To give you a real sense of what some of the challenges are, this month is the perfect time to do it, and this is Black History Month. Most of the programming that we produce, the National Live Programming Consortium, will be on this month. A good deal of what you see, 75% is something that we either funded, produced, distributed. But if you look at WIDA's programming, WIDA is the flagship station here in Washington, and look at their programming, you'll notice that Black History Month programming comes on at 2 a.m., 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There are 2 that come on at prime time at the 10 o'clock hour, and those are music programs, both on Dead Guys, neither of which we produce, not the documentary content, except for Black Panthers, which is the new one. But after February, those things will largely disappear. They will come on some in markets with heavy, with larger Black populations, but in most cities across the country, there is no market for that work after that happens. The producer will go around to schools with an education campaign, hopefully, maybe do some speeches, maybe talk about it, but then it sort of disappears into the ether. And there is essentially no market for that programming, no viable revenue market after you put it on YouTube, you put it on Vimeo. But Netflix is not buying most of that, Amazon is not buying that. Netflix just announced 31 new programs, none of them are by minority producers. So it's a tough market to get in once you step out of the public media space, once you step out of the festival space. So this box opens up a door, the OTT market specifically opens up a door for programming that is made for and about diverse languages, diverse audiences, to get out and find a market that goes direct to the consumer. And that model that is subscription-based, that is targeted, that does not have to rely on advertising, proving that the worth of that audience to a commercial entity, it is the future of minority programming. And so that's why we support open set platforms.
Great. Joe Torres, I know you've written extensively about the importance of having authentic minority and minority voices in the media, and anyone actually having their own voice represented in the media. And can you talk a bit about the importance of that and what this means, especially with this proceeding coming, both proceedings actually coming at the FCC?
First, thanks for inviting Chris and acknowledge to be on this panel. You know, everything, the work I work on, particularly at Free Press, I try to see it through the lens of, do people of color are able to tell our own stories without any gatekeepers. We have been trying to tell our stories since literally birth of this country, basically. The first black newspaper in 1827, right? Freedom's Journal. We wish to plead our own cause. And we've been fighting against structural racism in the media, which gatekeepers are facing. We have to try to convince gatekeepers to allow us to tell our story. And we've done it with radio, when radio became controlled by a few networks, back when radio first began. And whenever technology comes along, it opens up an opportunity for people of color or folks who are marginalized to be able to find a pathway in which they can tell and control their own story, everything everybody's talking about. And bypass gatekeepers who don't have economic incentive or political incentive as well. There's certain stories, I'm sure that black filmmakers, Latino makers deserve to find an audience that a lot of these cable networks or Netflix of the world won't touch, right? So it's political speech as well. You have the political freedom to say what you need to say. But because of the history of regulation and structural racism within everything that happens when it comes to all the issues that people of color face from every day in society, environmental to housing, educational, this is the same kind of issue that we're fighting against in every area. Media is no different. And so, the white community, white folks had a head start on us, with the radio station calling the white males, and then they became the first cable owners, and the open internet, and we're talking about set-top boxes provide an opportunity and for us to be able to have a little more of a level playing field. I'm not saying that there aren't challenges, but the current system that we have, the current cable model, is not working for us. We definitely want TV ones of the world, and even those networks like Univision and Telemundo that are not owned by people talking in that instance. We want those networks, I want those networks to succeed and serve the community, but we should have more than a couple of choices. I just want to read this couple of quotes. Back in the 1970s, particularly in the Black and Latino community, there was discussion about the potential of cable and how we can finally get to tell our own story. William Wright, was an activist, who was an incredible activist back in the 70s, ran a group called Black Efforts for Soul and Television. He said the potential of cable television is beyond imagination. With the increased number of channels possible in cable TV, we should make certain that some of those channels are set aside for us. It is fantastic what we can be able to do with them. We could begin to communicate with each other, something we desperately need to do. This is really our big chance, and if we blow this one, we might as well forget it. The National Council of Rasa had a magazine called Agenda, where they said cable represents the only avenue available for Hispanics to gain substantial control over a communications medium. If Hispanics do not immediately begin to actively pursue cable franchises, they will find cable franchises, not even channels, cable franchises. They will find themselves in the same situation that we are now with the broadcast industry, desperately trying to pry a few jobs and programs from an Anglo-controlled media. And last one, Charles Taylor, said, he worked at the Urban Institute back in the day, said he called cable the last communications frontier for the oppressed. So this is the promise of new technology. But when we have consolidation and gatekeepers, those dreams vanish. And so with set-top boxes and the open internet, the ability to stream provides us once again an opportunity. Now, the open internet has been incredibly successful, particularly when it comes to activism, right? Just the political dialogue over the past few years has changed because the open internet allowed us to bypass gatekeepers to convince them to tell our stories on the news. And so this is the hope. And this is in the cable model is not working. Set-top boxes provides an opportunity again for Eric was talking about, and I'm sure Brian's going to talk about, for folks who are creating content and are talented as hell to be able to find their voice, to be able to create a business and to be able to reach the community they're trying to serve. And I think this is what basically is all about. So, thanks.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to kick it to the end next to Mr. Mark Cooper, who has done one of the, along with John Hertmeyer, they've done one of the great studies on the cost of consumers, the cost to consumers of the set-top box market. He's going to give a quick presentation.
Okay, so this graph presents a striking picture of the excessive charges for set-top boxes imposed on consumers by cable operators. That almost all government statistics. Over the course of 20 years, this abuse of market power has probably cost consumers over $100 billion. How did this happen? It is the result of a lack of competition. 20 years ago this month, the 1996 Telecommunications Act was passed, and it opened the door to competition. In 20 years, no baby bell has ever overbuilt one of its neighbors to engage in head-to-head competition. In 20 years, no incumbent franchise cable company has ever overbuilt one of its neighbors to engage in head-to-head competition. They just don't compete with each other. What they did, of course, was buy each other out to create very, very small numbers and highly concentrated national and local numbers. And of course, they are trying to extend their physical space no-compete agreement into cyberspace with TV everywhere. The result is that we have gone from a crappy monopoly to a crummy duopoly. 2 is not enough for competition. 4 is too few. 6 is okay, and 10 would be vigorously competitive. Those numbers up there are a crummy duopoly, and that's all we've ever had in this business. The best we've ever had, and it's not good enough. Things are actually worse than a crummy duopoly, because wireless has never been able to compete with wireline. Intermodal competition is weakened by fundamental differences in functionality, quality, and cost. Satellite never disciplined cable pricing. Throughout its entire history, even though it grew, it could never discipline pricing. The FCC studied over and over again and found no effect on pricing. Wireless networks are capacity constrained compared to wireline networks. In other words, in economic terms, wireless and wireline are not good substitutes. And that is more true today than ever because of the bundling of true broadband and multi-channel video into one wire. So satellite can't deliver broadband, and wireless can't give you enough capacity to compete against wireline. Make no mistake about it. The markets for customer premise equipment are much more competitive than network access. If we can open the bottleneck, there is no doubt that competition in those device markets would yield immense cost and quality value to consumers. So a little bit of theory here. In order to have a vigorous competitive market in communications networks, you really have to open 2 bottlenecks. You have to open the network, and you have to open the network interface device. Those are 2 bottlenecks. If an incumbent controls either of those, they can control the flow of traffic over the network. Ironically, not only is this the 20-year anniversary of the Telecom Act of 1996, it's the 50-year anniversary of the beginning of the computer inquiries. in 1966. In the computer inquiries in 1968, the FCC opened the telephone network for non-discriminatory data transmission. In that same year, it opened the device market for competition through the Carter phone decision. So you could plug any device into the network. It didn't have to be approved by AT&T anymore. And that created the Hayes modem. And everybody in this room has 2 modems in their pocket or on their person. That was created by a decision to open the network. And so for 30 years, the internet flowed over Hayes modems, allowed by the FCC, on a network that was non-discriminatory, allowed by the FCC. 2 bottlenecks were opened up. So these are perfect examples of pro-competitive, pro-consumer FCC action on its own motion. It didn't have to have a new law passed by Congress. It was obligated to further the public interest, and it decided that opening those networks was in the public interest. Thus, the set-top box proceeding is the logical and necessary step following on the open internet order to create the same conditions that allow the internet to grow and succeed, to allow the broadband internet age to succeed. Access is also key in the media diversity. In fact, 2 years after the Carter phone and computer inquiries, the FCC adopted a set of rules called the Financial and Syndication Rules. I'm sure there's not too many people in this room who remember those. It turns out the Financial and Syndication Rules opened up prime time to independent producers. It said the networks could own no more than 20% of the programming that was aired in prime time. The result was remarkable, and it is truly the case that whenever we open these markets to competition and consumer choice, we get a miraculous growth. Virtually every major TV show that introduced the American people to their true diversity was produced by independents given access to prime time over the next 20 years. You can go down that list. You'll recognize some of those. Working class and professional blacks and Hispanics, single mothers, working mothers, real older people who had sex. Old people, sex. Never knew that. White misogynists, bigots, and liberals, multiracial communities, even multiracial buildings appeared on television. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but diversity was no longer invisible as a result of the financial syndication rules. The networks never would have done it on their own. They would have stuck to the Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver vision of America. Diversity was verboten in network television before FinCEN. So it's crucial that the flowering of digital media fosters diversity, not only in programming, which we can get, but also in ownership, which is something that neither FinCEN nor FCC rules have ever accomplished. But the opportunity is there, and we applaud the FCC for taking the key steps to open the network and examining the question of how we can get diversity in the content and ownership of the programming that goes on.
All right. Thank you, Mark. And our coordinator is Mr. Brian Wolfo, and Brian, we just heard about opening up 2 bottlenecks, the network and the device. But are there other barriers that are really important in these 2 proceedings that the FCC will be looking at? Mr. Brian.
I think there are, of course, barriers in both proceedings, but I think that there are some amazing opportunities. Opportunities in that, for the first time in a long time, minority vendors, Black, Latinos, independents are going to have access to the marketplace without having to go through gatekeepers that are their major competitors. If everyone in this room for a second imagines if they had a network idea to start a cable network and what that process would be, where they would have to go to the 1 or 2 or 3 gatekeepers in the country and beg those gatekeepers to get coverage on a network, and what type of business negotiation that would be. As a lawyer, if I go into a negotiation and I'm negotiating with my competitor, I'm probably not going to get the best result that that's the only person I had to negotiate with in the market. And unfortunately, a lot of these minority content producers have run into that buzzsaw over the years. There's a letter that came out this morning, Black Education Network. Black Education Network was a TV network started in New York in the 90s. They spent years trying to get covered carriage on cable systems, never were getting any responses from the cable carriers. They then got smart and hit to the game and figured that they would have to get some more leverage in order to get their content on the cable systems and to build a sustainable business deal for the carriers, subscriber fees, and ample carriage throughout some cable networks. So they decided that they would raise a few $1 billion to buy some cable systems that were spun off in a merger, Comcast-AT&T merger. Even with $2.5 billion, this minority company was denied buying this cable system, even though they outbid everybody else by over $100 million. And their plan B to get on cable systems did not work. So they then looked at it, and I looked back and saw some of their comments online, you know, and it's always interesting to look at the history of what people thought at different times with regard to these closed systems. And I looked at some of their comments online at the time, and they were talking about over the top, which wasn't the term of art then, but it was streaming. That was their play to get on. If they could only get to consumers and have access to this market and create this over-the-top company in 2001, they would have an opportunity. Of course, in 2001, we didn't have the penetration of broadband, we didn't have the technologies that we do right now. But now that we do, they look at that and they say, and it's expressed in this letter, and we'll get it distributed to you guys, that there's amazing opportunity now to get straight to the customer. And you see this in a number of streaming companies in the independent and minority communities. I mean, you look at Quelle TV, for example, which is an operation out of Alexandria, where they assembled content from over 70 producers from around the world to have positive ethnocentric content on a network with a subscriber fee, I think between $3 and $5 a month, so they have a sustainable business model. These types of things are possible when you have a marketplace that allows you to access it. One of the greatest challenges that we have in the current cable system, and I'll start to conclude my comments, is that cable companies, even the ones that get on the cable systems, aren't able to access content, aren't able to create sustainable business models. So you see a lot of very limited rerun content, 20, 30-year-old rerun content, not because they don't want to provide better content, but because, as Bob Johnson complained in the 90s with BET, the subscriber fees that we get are so limited that it creates a system in which we can't compete and create the content that we're capable of competing. So there are a lot of things that are going on with these two proceedings. The diversity proceeding is going to be very important, and a lot of people have been looking for this for years, and the set-top box piece is equally important. I think the charge that I've given to a lot of to everyone I talk to with regard to this issue is to try to get people to imagine what an environment looks like where TV is no longer controlled by gatekeepers, where our innovations in technology over the last 20, 25 years can finally be brought to bear. Because we're at a similar place, I think, as we were in '96 with the Telecom Act, where we were predicting what this internet would look like. I was on the Hill then, I'm aging myself again, in '96, and we couldn't predict, 10% of what exists now in technology. But we knew that there was technology and innovation that was coming, and opening the doors to that technology and spurring that innovation on was a good thing. I think we're at a similar crossroads with the set-top box issue now. And I would encourage everyone to think in terms of what their constituencies, what their journalism, what kind of content is capable of evolving when the doors opened up to millions of additional people. Just like the internet was opened up to millions of additional people. The OTT plays and the convergence of technologies will just unlocking the box provide similar opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, all the panelists. And we're going to start to have a conversation and questions here. We've got about 25 minutes left. So please don't be shy to raise your hand and let us know if you have a question for our expert panel here.
Can I do a real?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So let me do a
non-jargon breakdown so you'll understand sort of how it means. So understand the Netflix model for a second. Use Netflix as an example. So if you go into a cable business, you have a cable channel, you get in fees, subscriber fees, you're trying to buy content, you don't have a lot of operating cash. The Netflix model, if you're going to strictly subscribers, think about they have 70 million subscribers who pay about $8 a month. 70 million times 8. That's their monthly operating fees, right? And it comes right out of people's credit cards and it goes right into their pockets for them to buy content, to operate. If you take that on a much smaller level, a small company like my own that may have 500,000 subscribers, they pay $6 a month. When you add that up, that's $3 million a month in operating costs that you're not asking for advertising, don't know when it's coming in. You're talking about the first of the month, a check coming, or going right into your bank, operating costs to fuel filmmaking, to fuel creativity, to put yourself on the air. So that's sort of the basic business model of why OTT is so important for folks. But for this box, the way it works is simple. Why this becomes important is simple. On your cable box, you only get your cable listing. If you have Roku or something, you only get your streaming listings. If that streaming listing on your Apple TV or your cord cutter, you only have that box, also has your cable listing. And then anybody can go out and buy a box for $25 or so and have cable listings and all their streaming listings in one program guide. Then if I'm a small channel, I am now open to most of the country, where before I was only open to people who subscribe to Roku, who have a Roku box. And so that's the basic idea. So anybody who has Apple TV, if they can go out and buy Apple TV also has their cable programming. They can just get this one box and see all the cable listings on a program guide. And then mind you, all the cable stuff comes on at a certain time. So that will be its own program guide. They don't lose any identification because it comes on at a certain time. All the streaming stuff whenever you want to watch it. So that's a different listing. So a great interface on a new box would have stuff I can see in streaming. I want to see an Adam Sandler movie sometimes. There's it's on Amazon, it's on Netflix, it's on this, it's on this, all in one listing. I don't have to switch over to my Xbox to go to Amazon and then to my Blu-ray player, which has my Netflix, or my smart TV, which has my Pandora. It's all in one listing. I can just hit a button and figure out which one I want to watch it on. I still have to pay for it, right? Nothing becomes free just because I have a listing. I still have to pay for it, but I have that choice. The other thing from the cable side is if I'm a cord cutter and I buy a box so I can watch my streaming, if I have that listing of programs, then maybe I decide, well, you know what, maybe I should go back to cable because they've got this great stuff that I just forgot they had on, because I went for the streaming. Maybe that's not the, maybe I'll go back. There's an incentive to go back. If I can see my choices in one thing. And so when the bulk of cable consumers are able to see streaming listings in one box, then I now open up to visibility. Now, I also compete with the big guys too, so it's not a huge win if I'm a small guy. I can see HBO and ABC listings up against. Now, if I've got a little bit of content, I can beat most of the guys on Roku, right? They don't have much. But now I have to compete with the big guys. So it's going to be learning, it's going to be losing, it's going to be trying to get strategic about what you're doing, but it opens up the door for a small guy to run a business without somebody trying to hand him $1 billion check before you can even get started. And that's sort of the basic, without jargon, stakes
Let me take it down one more level, because I study the music industry a lot, and someone once asked me, what's the future of video? And I said, the music industry. And the reporter said, oh my God! In point of fact, everybody in this room has learned how to buy music on a piece-by-piece basis, how to find new music. The online distributors are now the single largest source of discovery. And that all came from choice. The labels hated it. Americans consume billions more songs every year because the label executives stopped forcing them to buy albums, right? It was the white guys in the label office that said, we know what consumers want, we'll give them these 12 songs. Consumers only want 2 of those songs. And they wouldn't sell the consumer a single. They banished the single in the 1990s. You couldn't buy them in the 1990s. And along came the MP3 player, which is an open interface. And today, you almost can't sell an album because consumers get choice. And so Americans consume many more times songs at 1/3 the cost over 20 years. The labels ain't happy about it, and you know why they resisted it. They have sued. Oh, they went over court cases and lose the war in the marketplace. And I honestly believe that we can have a video space that is as consumer friendly and diversity friendly. Because let's be clear, there are 7 million bands in MySpace. There have always been 7 million bands in America. They've been in garages and on street corners. Except today, they all can make money over the internet. I know, my son does that for a living. And so there's a future here if we can get it open and allow markets to define themselves. There's a massive minority market. It just doesn't fit the business models of the record labels and the cable companies.
Folks, feel free to ask questions. I'm going to ask one here. So, essentially, Eric, you talk about business models. We have heard a lot of fear, though, in this discussion that's been going on the last few weeks about Unlocking the Box, about folks moving off of what they've known. Is that fear irrational, or is it just, how would you compare the different business models that you described versus the field?
I don't know if it's the greatest fear. I mean, I moved from DC to Chicago, and I had to get a new cable system, and I couldn't find a channel, for 2 days. And then I could. So it's not a big deal to do it. You don't have to get the box if you don't want. The idea is just there's choice. If your cable box is fine, then you should keep it. But I have the X1 platform on Comcast, which is wonderful. But understand that it got wonderful because TiVo was so wonderful. And so to compete with TiVo, Comcast innovated, and the X1 platform, works a lot like TiVo, and it's very good. But they had to get that good because they had competition. And so, there would be nothing preventing those cable companies to now offer streaming on their box. I mean, it's a code. You're talking about coding. If they want to do that, there are some cable companies that are experimenting with that. There's some places where, TiVo is being allowed to bring in some cable programming. So I don't know that there's a fear. And I would actually say that the music industry is probably not the best. Because the music industry, labels did lose in some sense because of that. I don't think that networks lose in the same way that the music industry does. Because, having a new program guide does not mean that you're going to be pulling apart what the networks are showing. You don't have to show pull individual shows because of that program. If you want to watch, HBO all day or USA all day, you can. You don't have to pull this one thing out. So it doesn't destroy the ability of those networks to brand and to sell advertising across their full networks. You still have to subscribe to cable if you have this box. You still have to have it. You just have to punch in a code or something so you can see that. So it's not as if because you have this new box that has streaming stuff and cable, that all of a sudden your cable stuff is free and you get to watch it whenever you can. So it doesn't really, it's really about the consumer experience. I can see it all in one place. I liken it to a stereo receiver. I'm still old school. I like, audio. I have a big receiver. I plug all my HDMI into it, and I can hear all my stuff the way I want to hear it because it's all in one box, and I want one remote, and I can hear all of that. Same kind of thing. It's the choice I make. Most people don't have stereo receivers. That's their choice. This is the way I want to make it make sense for me. But I don't think that, again, I don't think the music industry is the best thing because I don't think this hurts the networks in the way that they think. The restaurant, just down the street, you have a place called Union Kitchen. Just to use an analogy. Union Kitchen, they have an incubator for new restaurants who want to finish. They teach them how to do it. They fund them. They set them up in new restaurants. The restaurant industry funds this incubator. You know, they're not saying we don't want competition because they know if the better restaurants are in DC, the more people come to DC and eat. You know, the more people come to, people go to 14th Street now and eat because there are 20 good places to eat. You know, the second good place didn't kill the first place. Both of them get more business now. So it's the same kind of thing. So if you've got better folks coming, people will want TV. People will say, wow, you know, let me get TV. Let me get every choice I can. Let me have cable. Let me have the streaming stuff because this stuff is good. It's great. I want it. And the stuff that's bad will lose. The stuff that's good will win. And that's just how it works.
We have one question here.
This has been tried before.
And tell us who you are.
Ronnie Taylor, Com Daily. You guys have been through this before. I'm giving NPRM and NOI. That's not exactly like a rule change. Why is this going to work now when it hasn't before?
And I know we don't have a microphone, so I'll try to repeat the question.
So I mean, I think you're referring to the fact,
The question, if you read the question.
yeah. So just Monty asks, hasn't the FCC tried this before and it hasn't worked? And what we're talking about, to be clear, is the FCC updating its implementation of a portion of the 96 Act, which tells it to create competition for these video devices that we're talking about. And the FCC did try before, and as we've seen, it hasn't been totally successful. A few people have referenced TiVo. There is something called Cable Card now. It only applies to cable, not the other pay TV systems. But due to a number of flaws, really, there haven't been a lot of companies that have ever wanted to take advantage of it. So 99% of cable customers currently rent their set-top boxes. So we're wondering, okay, so why were there flaws with Cable Card? Part of it is just the fact that it was a cable-designed technology, and really, if you're giving the cable industry the ability to decide how devices that compete with their own devices have to work, I mean, I think you have a conflict of interest there. Additionally, just at this point, the cable card technology is is old, and we would like to replace it with something that is more capable and more informed by modern standards.
To follow up on that, I mean, is the fact that these new devices, these new set-top boxes, are also internet connected, is that a game changer?
Yeah, I think when we were considering cable card years ago, really the idea was you would replace your cable box with a box that was pretty much similar. Maybe it has a hard drive that allows you to record programming. Maybe it offers a couple of features that the cable box doesn't open. But streaming video wasn't a thing. So basically, it just had the same content as cable, just maybe in a better box, maybe in a cheaper box. And that is a definite consumer benefit. I don't want to underestimate just the fact of just having a better or cheaper box or a more capable box that only accesses cable content. That's a definite consumer benefit. But now, when you have the ability for content producers to bypass the cable bundle entirely via the open internet and to have devices that can integrate those two content sources, I think that is also a pretty big change from what happened when we were implementing cable card.
There's a question in the back, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you. So I don't have a cable box, and I've just heard about how they're institutionally kind of racist. Is there a reason that people would be going and getting cable boxes?
I get a shot. You're asking why people would get cable boxes?
Yeah, I just heard a bunch of reasons why it's a duopoly, it's an awful system, and I have the option to get streaming content, like I can watch NBA live, why get a cable box?
Well, let me, then you can jump in. So we've seen a lot of attempts by a lot of very big companies to create an online-only video streaming service that would have all of the same quality of content that you have for cable, and it hasn't worked. Amazon couldn't do it, Intel couldn't do it, Apple has been trying to do it and hasn't yet. So you've had the online video that we have seen so far. It's great for consumers, but it tends to be stuff that is otherwise not on cable or it's back catalog stuff. You're looking at what the majority of Americans, you have to sort of sometimes step back from the DC policy or journalist bubble where there are a lot of cord cutters and look at what the bulk of Americans do and what the bulk of Americans watch. A lot of that content is still cable only. So yes, certainly there are problems with the cable industry and the diversity of content and everything they carry. But at the same time, I think you shouldn't underestimate how a lot of the content they have is still exclusive to cable, and how a lot of people really do want to watch it.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider the cable systems as racist. I think that they're just, they're business people. I mean, if you go back years and years, there were only three network channels to watch. And if there are 3 network channels to watch, that was a sustainable business model even then, because you only had 3 choices to watch. They, parsed up that content and advertising for that content. The benefit of being a cable company that owns a lot of the networks on the cable system is that you have content saying you control the pipeline and you sell that content. So I think it all goes to, what is your business incentive to open up more? And based on their business model, if I was them, I would have no interest in opening up more. My business model, I don't think that's racist, and and it's obviously not, an antitrust issue based on, our current laws. But I think it's just a business model. I think, we're here talking about what can be done to open up that model, because there is, a public interest in opening up that model for all the content that people would like to be able to access. There are, of course, people at different ends of the spectrum that have the cord cutters, the so-called cord cutters, the people that are very sophisticated with their Roku and all those types of technologies. And then there's another extreme. There's, I'm gonna throw a mother out there who has the, analog cable box, which she's been paying for 25 years. And will probably complain if she doesn't see anything on television all the time. But, so there's this spectrum, there's this wide spectrum in audiences. And our solution to all of that is to at least open up innovation the same way we did with the former rental telephones in houses, and see where that takes us. And there are so many things that have happened in the 20 years since the Telecom Act with regard to technology. I mean, most of us sit around a house with all types of devices that have different capabilities: smart TVs, smartphones, DVD players, and play things, Xboxes, and all these different types of applications. So our idea is only in opening up that innovation and not burdening ourselves, not shackling ourselves to a cable system of the 80s and only.
Joe,
The simple fact of the matter is that about 95 million households in America get a multi-channel video stream. You may think they're fools for doing so. You may not want to watch most of the crap on that TV, but that's a massive market that consumers are willing to pay for. And in our capitalist economy, we favor competition in those kinds of markets. You may hate that market and say, boy, what a waste. And 35 hours a week in the average household may seem ridiculous. But hey, that's who we are. And so the answer then becomes, both for antitrust and regulation, we want that market to serve the interests of those people. If you'll read the 96 Act, it actually says we can support services as universal service when the majority of the people have adopted them. The law doesn't say what they should adopt. And having adopted high-speed broadband, which is a frivolous thing anyway, who needs it? Actually, a lot of people need it for lots of things, right? Then we want it to work as a competitive market. And so the answer is, there's a lot of people who do it, and they ought to be served in an effective, consumer-friendly, competitive manner.
Joe, I think about the chart that Mark put up about markets opening up through FCC action, and we've seen, not that the devices or the networks are racist, but just the opportunity that's opened up. And we really see that with the internet, and is that really a potential thing for video?
Well, I mean, a little bit of the gentleman saying, for me, it's I don't think there's any person of color. Maybe I think most people of color, or a lot of people of color, there's a lot of groups who complain about the quality of the programming they're receiving and the lack of it. We have a campaign right now. There's a hashtag campaign with Oscar's so white, right?
Right.
And so Latino groups complaining all the time, about the lack of programming on the cable system and so the box is just a device and a way to be able to get to content, to allow more content to be seen potentially by a bigger audience that Eric and Brian was talking about. So we're not receiving the news and information, particularly when you look at the news side, forget the entertainment side, the news side, we're definitely not being served by the news media. So the ability to be able to get back to tell our own story that Brian was talking about with quality TV, that's what, for me, this is why I care deeply about this issue. And it is a platform, a device that's going to allow us to be able to access different platforms with how content is delivered to us and integrates them and gives a chance for black filmmakers so their film is seen beyond Black History Month, even if they're lucky to be on PBS, which a lot of them aren't, to be able to continue to get the news and information we need in order for us to be able to tell our stories. And when we're telling our stories, we're able to create cultural change, and cultural change often is the prelude to political change. And so this is what, for me, motivates me about this, because we're trying to be able to empower ourselves in our daily lives. And, film is culture. News and information shape culture. And this is what I think a lot of folks who are journalists and filmmakers, they're trying to make a contribution to that. So anyway.
So we got about 5 minutes left. I saw 2 hands. I want to try and get to them first. You can wait officially.
Yes, thank you so much for the conversation. I'm Amy Hinojosa, President and CEO of MANA, a national Latina organization. And one of my responsibilities also is to sit on the board for the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. So my questions are relative to the business case. The first being with regards to apps being the future of how we access all information. And with Latinos in particular being the highest adopters, the fastest adopters of mobile technology, whether that's telephones, whether that's iPad devices, that sort of thing. This conversion, this set-top conversion to me seems to be, for lack of a better way to put it, a dial-up solution to a digital problem. That's just not where we're accessing our information anymore, particularly not our streaming or our movie capabilities. But second, when we talk about the business case and what that means for increasing competition, I would agree with Mr. Torres that we don't have the level of engagement in those areas that we want. We don't have enough diversity in the space. However, the companies that are seeking this proposal with the FCC have across the board the most abysmal records in terms of diversity and inclusion. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, how is that going to increase diversity and inclusion if the companies that are seeking to enter the space through this change in FCC policy don't know where to start?
So I heard really 2 questions
Yes.
there, and maybe John, you can start with moving to being in a digital age. What does this mean for the app capabilities of this proposal? And back to the other companies.
A lot of FCC debates, this one included, end up stuck with this jargon, which is a little outdated, such as set-top box, because no box is actually put on top of your TV anymore. This couldn't even balance there. Similarly,
I just use the
our
terminology.
current proposal is not about just a box that you would attach to your TV. Instead, it's about saying that any device in your home, any app, any device can access the video content that you're paying for. So there is no conflict between saying that we're moving towards an app and a web-based future for accessing information and our proposal. Our proposal, in fact, enables anyone to make an app that allows people to interact with the content that they're paying for on their cable TV. It would work on you can work on your iPhones, iPads, any existing device. So, I'll sort of concede that the term set-top box is outdated. A lot of FCC terms are outdated and don't really make a lot of sense anymore. So, I'd ask for forgiveness for using that sort of jargon, but there's no alternative. And in terms of who's pushing for the proposal, I think other people can address this as well.
I'll say on that one, and please, the business guys, about the business case, but on Google and Netflix, it's not about them for me, They are, Brian Eric was talking about the content they bought so far this year, none of them black producers, right? So there are gatekeepers involved, right? And this is about how do us, as people of color, have the ability to our own self-determination and bypass the so-called middleman, and whoever that middleman is. And it's true with the open internet, net neutrality. I mean, my group, we protested outside of Google when they didn't do the right thing. And the diversity thing, it clearly has a major problem, right? Here I recently Chanel Hardy in DC, Stephanie Valencia, which is great, but it's only a drop. And the fact that those companies are not more diverse, just for the pure because they are major employers now, it's a major issue. They should be held accountable. Just like newspapers were held accountable, or being tried to be held accountable, and diversity in the journalism industry or programming, they are now, we have to hold them accountable too. So, but it's not, for me at least, this is not about them. This is about us, our community being able to, like, I guess with non-traditional media, own our own TV stations, own our own ability to control what we do, produce and make for our own communities. We are the ones in charge of that experience.
But on a very basic level, there is
There's no lobby for, streaming networks who want to get on, minority streaming networks who want to get on. There's no spokesperson for that group with a Washington presence who can jump into everybody's congressional office like that. So that's maybe why you're not hearing that. The folks are waiting to champion the bit to see what's going to happen so they can jump out there and try to build their business.
And I know I'm not signed on to the letter opposing the set-top box, so perhaps there could be more dialogue. Sometimes in these debates, there's disagreement on. I think sometimes we want the same thing, right? Which is like our community to be able to find an audience, but a theory of change might be different.
All right, we're at 1 o'clock. I saw one more hand in the back. I want to go to him, but also I know, and I'm sorry, why don't you just give me a question and tell us who you are?
Yeah, I'm Larry Irving. I've been fighting before since I've worked on the 82 Cable Act, the 84 Cable Act, I wrote the 92 Cable Act, and was a point person on the 96 Cable Act. So the cable box issue is a real issue, and it's something we also are concerned about. That said, we have a significant problem, as the young lady mentioned, with the Congressional Black Caucus and every existing black programmer that I've talked to expresses some concern about changing one gatekeeper for a new gatekeeper who gets between them and the audience. We need a lot more dialogue about what this set-top box has to offer us. And with regard to I don't know your name, I can't speak with old,
Joe.
But Joe, with regard to Joe's comments, let's be very clear. $8 billion will be spent by Netflix and Amazon this year. Google's going to spend whatever they're going to spend, another $1 billion, and they are funding no people of color. If we're going to prioritize diversity of content, and we're going to exchange the existing gatekeeper for another gatekeeper, and that gatekeeper is an existential threat to existing minority programmers, let's really have a deep conversation about exactly what we're doing. And as the young lady also said, we're moving from a set-top box environment to an environment that's mobile, that's digital, and we're going to take an old technology, bring new gatekeepers in, possibly economically harm some of the few viable existing minority broadcasters, and not hold accountable
Larry, I
for
don't disagree.
$8 billion spending any of it in the black community. These are problems,
Larry,
brother.
I love you, Larry, but I don't know how I'm harming, booty shaking videos on BET and whatever
So
TV money showing by
so is it
having my
TV
own
one?
network on Roku.
30 members of the Black Caucus and
So-
every existing black program
That
is not
means nothing to
concerned.
me.
Let's talk, well, mean anything to you.
So
but
I'm
saying,
millions
I'm
of
saying.
black folks and brown folks do
All right.
value that program.
Joe,
sir.
so this is a good topic to end on, because so there's this question of
Wait. Having written those laws, Larry,
Right.
you know what you can and cannot do under the laws of our land, right? And so you have to understand that your best opportunity is to create markets where people can succeed. And you can go and bitch at the corporations, which obviously a lot of people do.
So
But if there's no
empowering people who
opportunity
build
to
invest in my community is
succeed,
better for my community?
what?
Empowering people who don't invest in my community is better for my
No,
community?
there's nothing you can do. You can't prevent them from investing. That's your problem. You have to find a way to build a community where you can invest in yourselves. That's Joe's point.
So
You wrote those 3 acts, and they didn't solve the problem. And they couldn't solve the problem because you didn't have the basis for building independent, self-owned media. And the digital technology makes that much more possible because it lowers the cost of
It's
succeeding.
a longer
So here's
conversation.
a question to actually get to the point that Larry's making. We do have 2 proceedings here. And we talked a lot about the set-top box proceeding. But I'm curious, is there an opportunity in an inquiry about barriers to diverse programming? Because for years we've had a conversation about barriers to programming that include access to capital, owning networks. But as we're moving into this online video world, are those questions applicable to the online world? You know, we talk about companies and whether or not they have leadership that is open to diverse programming. So are those sort of questions relevant?
Sure, I mean, access to capital is usually, even though it's a much lower barrier to go to set up an OTT network, you're still dealing with credit card vendors, you're dealing with a lot of smaller problems. You're dealing with a simple problem as, 25% of your customers are lost every month based on the fact that their credit cards might not be working, every month. So it's small things you got to think about, things you have to plan for. But that's where strategy comes from. People are going to lose, people are going to win. That's how you learn the business, by making these mistakes. It's still very early in the market. But I have no reason to go to Google or to anybody. I can launch today an over-the-top network online if I want to do it. I don't have to talk to any of those folks to launch. I've got to pay somebody for bandwidth, but that does not have to be Google. I got to pay somebody anyway. But I can set up. I'm not dealing with a big company at any point. If I go to Roku, if I've set up my own system, I can just publish on Roku. If I'm a new guy and I have no processes and I don't have a staff, then maybe they take a percentage. But guess what? If they don't take a percentage, they've got 100 channels with different credit card companies, and one day the channel works, one day it doesn't, and that's what happens. So there are going to be lessons to learn in all of this, but I don't see the big companies. How Google will win, maybe they do some analytics on the side of this with their bots, but who says they're going to win? I mean, if the innovation is there, we're not talking about a new box, we're talking about new software that allows any tool to sort of drive this away. We're not talking about a specific new device. So anybody in their basement can develop a new way to do this if the regulations are there that says they can do it. So it does not have to be those guys. And we can fund those guys.
I think first, Larry, your comments, I'd like to introduce you to some programs and disagree with you forcefully, and there's some Congressional Black Caucus members that have some very different opinions than what you laid out as well.
But there are 30 members who did sign up.
But let me get to the notice of inquiry. The notice of inquiry is something that I think we should all be able to agree on. The notice of inquiry is going to ask some very solid questions about diversity in programming and what some of these barriers are. That's going to be our opportunity to put a lot of these narratives on the record and hopefully to develop some consensus to solutions on these issues, whether they be access to capital, whether they be issues with regard to lack of competition in the marketplace, whether they be issues with regard to lack of leverage that leads to a lot of even some of the networks that are on being limited on both subscriber fees, which are way too low based on the people. When I watch some of these programs, I'm more than willing to pay what I pay probably to ESPN every month, which would sustain them a lot more. But also with regard to some of the contractual issues that go to some of these channels where they will have a network on cable where they have to agree a lot of times to not to stream from that network as well. So there are a lot of these systematic issues, and I think this is our opportunity to talk about. And I think, if we look at winners and losers in this technology evolution, that both sides know we're headed that way. We choose winners and losers based on one large company or another. I think we're missing an important, and for me, and for Joe, and for Eric, and Mark, and John, I think on this panel, everyone on this panel, there's an amazing technology opportunity that if we position these organizations and their companies ready to take advantage of these things, and we can see some solutions. But they all connect together, as will net neutrality and keeping these pipelines open. And those will be, continue to be gatekeepers.
So I would love to keep this conversation going. We're well past 1 o'clock, though, I think the important point is we are just starting this conversation because both of these proceedings will have an open record at the FCC, and I think we're encouraging everyone to follow it and participate, and so we hope we will, and we hope you'll look at both the opportunity on the technology side of the box, but also the questions that Brian was just talking about with the NOI. I want to thank our panelists. If you'll help me thank our panelists for and talk to them further since we have to